You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
15 years. That's how long Avery and I had been married. A milestone, people would call it. A victory, maybe. To me, it was a slow burn kind of story, one built on routines, patched over arguments, shared laughter, and enough memories to fill a dozen photo albums we never got around to organizing. So for our 15th anniversary, I thought I'd do something meaningful. Not grand. Not flashy. Just something, us. We used to love quiet nights in. So I set the dining room just the way she liked it. Candles, cloth napkins, wine I had been saving since our trip to Napa. Lemon garlic salmon, the one she always pretended not to crave until it was on the table, and that couscous salad she said she only tolerated, though she somehow always finished her bowl before I did. The stereo played Norah Jones low in the background. Even the dog seemed to sense something was different. She lay quietly in her bed, watching the door like she knew someone special was supposed to walk through it. Only she never did. At first, I wasn't alarmed. I told myself to give her space. Doctors run late. Emergency surgeries. Last-minute consults. It happens. So I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the table, staring at the flickering candlelight, checking the time more often than I wanted to admit. An hour passed. Then another. Around 9:23 p.m., a message finally came through. Emergency at the clinic. Staying late. So sorry. I'll explain when I get home. I love you. I stared at the screen. Something about it didn't sit right, not the emergency, not the apology, not even the I love you. It felt drafted. Like something prepared in advance. I don't know how else to explain it, but I read that text 3 times and felt less reassured with each pass. And that's when the gnawing feeling took over. The one you try to ignore because once you let it in, it doesn't go away. I opened our shared home security app. It wasn't something I used much, we only really set it up to monitor deliveries and our dog Walker, but it tracked locations, too. Just in case. That night, I tapped the GPS marker tied to her phone. She wasn't at the Houston clinic. She was in San Antonio. Not just San Antonio, but at a rooftop restaurant. And not just any rooftop restaurant. The rooftop restaurant. The one we had discovered on a spontaneous weekend trip 5 years ago, the one with the copper lanterns and the endless view of the skyline where she once whispered that everything felt perfect. I stared at the location dot for a long time. At first, I thought maybe it was wrong. GPS glitches. Or maybe she stopped somewhere else on the way back. Maybe she was meeting someone from work. The justifications tried to crowd out what I already knew deep down. She wasn't supposed to be there, not tonight, and definitely not without me. I set my phone down and looked at the table. The salmon had gone cold. The candles were burning low. Her wine glass remained untouched. In all our years, we had never completely missed an anniversary, not even during residency, not even when her dad passed, not even when we were in the middle of a fight. This night had meant something. Or at least it did to me. Around midnight, she came home. I heard the car pull into the driveway. Heard her heels on the pavement, then the gentle click of the door unlocking. I stayed seated at the table. The food had long since gone cold, but I hadn't moved. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't turned off the music. I just waited. She walked in with a flurry of energy, forced and too bright. Her hair was still perfectly curled. Her makeup didn't have the telltale signs of a 14-hour hospital shift. Her dress, fitted, elegant, and definitely not a work outfit, was one I'd never seen before. And the perfume? It wasn't the subtle floral one she usually wore. It was bold. Expensive. Intentional. She didn't notice the table at first. Or maybe she pretended not to. She dropped her keys in the bowl, turned to me with an apologetic smile, and launched into what felt like a rehearsed monologue. There was a critical case. They paged me in last minute. My phone died right in the middle of triage. I couldn't get away. I'm so sorry. I hated missing dinner. I hated missing this. Her eyes darted to the untouched meal, and for a moment something flickered in her expression. Regret, maybe? Or guilt? But just as quickly it vanished. I didn't say anything. She stepped closer, reaching out like she was going to touch my shoulder, then hesitated. You must be starving, she said, gesturing toward the table. Do you want me to heat it up? We could still have dessert together. She was good. Too good. The tone of her voice, the careful words, the timing, they all felt like pieces of a play she'd practiced in her head on the drive home. But she had forgotten one thing, the location app. And I hadn't. No, I said quietly. I'm not hungry. She nodded slowly. Then turned away, walking into the kitchen and pouring herself a glass of water like nothing had happened. I sat there for a few more minutes, unmoving. The music played on. The candles burned out. My dog had long since gone upstairs. And somewhere between the silence and the ticking clock, something in me quietly shifted, something irreversible. I didn't accuse her that night. Didn't shout. Didn't demand answers. I just watched her move around the kitchen like everything was fine, like the truth wasn't floating in the air between us, thick and suffocating. Because sometimes silence says more than any confrontation ever could. And in that silence, I felt the first crack appear, not just in our marriage, but in the foundation of who I thought we were. Who I thought she was. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Sleep had visited in short, fractured bursts, slipping through my fingers like sand. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Avery's soft breathing beside me, a strange, cruel reminder that things still looked normal on the surface. But I knew what I had to do. Not argue. Not accuse. Just understand. Something inside me needed the truth piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle I never asked to complete. She stirred slightly as I got out of bed. Early meeting, she murmured, not even opening her eyes. Yeah, I lied. She rolled over and went still again. I stood at the foot of the bed for a moment longer, just watching her. Part of me wanted to believe I was wrong. That there was some bizarre explanation that would stitch everything back together. But that hope was thinning fast. In the kitchen, I made coffee and opened my notebook, the one I used for work notes, but that morning it became something else. A log. A map. A quiet autopsy of a dying relationship. I began with memories, scattered ones that had felt harmless until now. I wrote down dates, locations, comments that didn't sit right. It started, I realized, sometime in late spring. That's when Avery began pulling away. Not abruptly. Subtly. The shift came disguised as ambition. Longer hours at the clinic. Last-minute conferences. Administrative headaches. At first, I chalked it up to burnout. I brought her dinner at work. Sent her little jokes via text. Tried to be understanding. But then came the nights she didn't answer my calls. I was with a patient, she would say, brushing her hair back, not meeting my eyes. Then she changed her wardrobe. Nothing drastic, but noticeable, tailored pieces, new brands. She said it was for a promotion. She said she wanted to feel confident. I had applauded it at the time. I even told her she looked great. She joined a new gym downtown. One with valet parking and juice bars far from her usual no-frills preferences. She started wearing perfume she'd never used before, complex, sharp, almost too bold. It wasn't for me. I would have known. I knew her old scent better than my own. She'd come home glowing from workouts, brushing off my offers to join her. You'd hate the yoga instructor, she joked. Too intense. Then there was the call. A few months back, I walked in on her mid-conversation. She fumbled her phone like it had burned her hand. That was a patient, she said quickly, having a panic attack. It hadn't sounded like distress. It sounded quiet. Soft. An asterisk mate. But I hadn't pushed. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure husband who couldn't trust his wife of 15 years. So I let it slide. Now I was dragging each of those moments back into the light, and none of them looked the same. There was also the postcard. That memory had almost slipped by. It had arrived in the mail one weekend while Avery was in Dallas for a healthcare seminar. I'd collected the mail, flipping through it absently when I saw it, a postcard with a watercolor of a downtown San Antonio street. No return address. Just our home address. The handwriting simply said, "Miss you already." It was addressed to her. No name. No stamp, just tucked in between flyers like someone had dropped it off. I had shoved it in the drawer, unsure what to make of it. But now? Now I saw it clearly. It was the same week she'd been away at a seminar. The same week I'd called her late one night and she'd answered breathless, saying she'd just stepped out of a session. I retrieved the postcard from the drawer and stared at it. My chest tightened. That street corner. I'd walked it before. During our anniversary weekend in San Antonio. The same trip where we found that rooftop restaurant. The same one her location pinged the night before. Coincidence? No. Not anymore. Then there was the address I'd written down from the back of that card. A small apartment complex near Pearl District. I hadn't given it much thought at the time, maybe it belonged to a friend, a patient, a clinic affiliate. But I had written it down. Instinct, maybe? And now that address took on an entirely new weight. And the wine. That detail hadn't even seemed strange until I forced myself to revisit it. About 2 weeks ago, I'd opened the fridge and spotted a bottle of Bordeaux, expensive, imported, not our usual fare. I suggested we open it together. She waved me off with a smile. I'm cutting back, she said, trying to stay fit. But the bottle disappeared 2 days later. Unopened. I found the cork in the trash beneath the coffee grounds. So someone had drunk it. Just not with me. A few more notes trickled in. A receipt I found in the laundry from a boutique shop she claimed she never visited. A changed password on her tablet. Her sudden interest in podcasts about reinvention, boundaries, taking control of your narrative. I leaned back in the chair and stared at my notes. It all came together like pieces from a puzzle I had been too afraid to solve. Avery wasn't drifting. She was departing. And I wasn't part of where she was headed. I closed the notebook and sat in silence, the mug of coffee cooling beside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something settled in me, a heavy, bitter knowing. Not just about her, but about how far she was willing to go. This wasn't about a fling. This was premeditated. Strategized. She was changing her body, her image, her routine, like someone preparing for a new life, a second act. The worst part? She was good at it. So good that even now, with the evidence piling in front of me, I still wanted to doubt it. Still wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation for the late nights and false locations. But innocence doesn't hide wine corks. Doesn't rewrite shared passwords. Doesn't leave postcards without names. And as much as I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen the signs I had, I just wasn't ready to face what they meant. Now I was. Not because I wanted to confront her yet. Not because I was planning revenge. But because the truth was heavier than the lie. And if I didn't carry it honestly, it was going to bury me. That morning, she breezed into the kitchen in a charcoal gray wrap dress, still drying her hair. "You're up early," she said, grabbing a yogurt from the fridge. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my voice steady. She leaned in to kiss my cheek. I let her. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not love. Not hate. Just the quiet knowledge that the person in front of me had already left. Her body was here. Her schedule, her clothes, her coffee order. But Avery? She was gone. And all I had left were breadcrumbs. 2 days. That's how long I waited before doing something I swore I'd never do: follow my wife. It wasn't anger that pushed me. It wasn't even pain. It was certainty. A dull, gnawing certainty that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was living a double life. And I wasn't about to let it stay hidden. That Thursday, she told me she had another overnight shift at the clinic. An emergency fill-in. Last minute, she said as she packed an overnight bag with surprising ease. Her tone was light, almost relieved, like she was glad to be pulled away. I nodded, told her to drive safe. And the moment her taillights disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys and followed. I didn't trail her directly. I gave it 10 minutes. Checked her location on the app. She hadn't disabled it, maybe thinking I'd forgotten it existed. But I hadn't. The blue dot didn't lead to Houston. It was heading to San Antonio. Again. I didn't need to guess where she was going. I knew. That postcard address? The rooftop restaurant? It all pointed to one thing. Still, part of me hoped I was wrong. I drove in silence. No music. No thoughts I could hold for longer than a few seconds. Just one image, her leaving, bag in hand, as bright in a way they hadn't been around me in months. When I reached the Pearl District, I parked half a block away from the apartment complex on the postcard. It was a sleek, modern building with ivy-covered balconies and expensive cars lined out front. The kind of place you move into when you're starting fresh, alone, or with someone new. Her car was there, parked in the lot. I turned off my engine. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I didn't know what I was waiting for exactly. Proof, I guess. Something beyond the growing storm in my chest. And then she appeared. She walked out of the building with a man. Tall, clean-shaven, tan suit, no tie. Casual, confident. He reached for her waist like it was second nature. She didn't pull away. She was wearing a vibrant blue dress. The kind she hadn't worn in years. Something playful. Young. Paired with heels I'd never seen before and a necklace that wasn't hers, at least not from anything I'd ever bought. They laughed as they walked toward a black sedan. He opened the door for her. She touched his shoulder as she slid in. I couldn't hear a word they said, but I didn't need to. I could feel the Macy from the sidewalk. They drove off. I didn't follow. I already had what I came for. Back home. I sat in the driveway for a long time before going inside. The house felt different now. Emptier, like it had been hollowed out in my absence. I poured a drink. Sat down at her laptop. She'd taken it with her, of course. But I remembered that she sometimes used her old one for clinic paperwork. It was still in the den closet, tucked behind an old printer. To my surprise, the battery still worked. I opened it, tried her old password. It worked. The desktop was clean. Too clean. But I wasn't looking for mess. I was looking for slips. And she had made one. In the documents folder, under a file labeled Refi Planning, I found something that made my stomach turn. It was a scanned draft of a power of attorney form, made out in her name, authorizing the sale of our jointly owned lake house. Not a lake house, our lake house, the one we'd bought 7 years ago, the one where we'd taken her nieces swimming, where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary under string lights and fireflies. That house. The buyer listed? Kevin Lorenz. There was no context, no notes, but I'd never heard the name. Not once. Attached to the file were emails. Not a lot, but enough. Most were threads between Avery and a law firm in Dallas. Discussion of terms. Property valuations. The phrase quiet transition plan appeared more than once. Another email, sent just days ago, included a PDF marked Future Residence Options, with links to listings in San Antonio, condos, townhomes, all under her name. The final thread was brief. Just one message. From Kevin Lorenz to Avery Reeves. Subject, final steps. Message, everything looks good. Once the POA is notarized, we'll move ahead with the transfer. Can't wait to make this official. Dinner was perfect. I'll call you tomorrow. K. There it was. Not just infidelity. Not just deception. She wasn't planning an affair. She was planning a full exit. A strategic dismantling of the life we'd built together, legal, financial, and emotional. And she had done it quietly, methodically, as if she were leaving a job, not a marriage. I sat back, the room spinning slightly. My hands were cold. My mind was too still. It should have exploded with fury, with heartbreak. Instead, all I felt was clarity. I knew now. I knew who Kevin was. I knew what she was doing. And I knew that this wasn't just about love lost. It was about betrayal layered in manipulation. She'd already left me. Weeks ago. Maybe longer. She'd just forgotten to tell me. Or maybe she had hoped I wouldn't notice until it was too late. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I just sat on the couch, rereading the emails, staring at her digital handwriting in the form, watching the cursor blink at me like it was daring me to react. But I didn't. Not yet. Because now I needed more than confirmation. I needed a plan. I didn't go to work the next day. Didn't even call in. There are certain moments in your life that split everything into a before and after. Discovering Avery's betrayal, her quiet, calculated escape plan, was one of them. But what came next shattered the line between pain and paranoia. And it all started with a single call. It was Randy, my younger brother. The one person who always saw through Avery's charm, who had warned me, half joking, half serious, that something's off with her. Even years ago, I didn't always listen. Maybe I should have. Come to the cabin, he said. Tonight, we need to talk. Just us. He didn't sound scared, but there was an urgency to his voice that tightened my chest. You okay? I asked. There was a pause. I found something, he said. It's about her. And the guy. I didn't need to ask who her was. Or the guy. He gave me a time, 9 p.m., and hung up. The family cabin was about 45 minutes outside the city, tucked into the woods with no neighbors for miles. Dad bought it before I was born. We spent summers there, drinking bad beer, fixing leaky pipes, swatting mosquitoes the size of golf balls. It was where Randy and I buried a box of comic books in the backyard after a thunderstorm ruined the power for 3 days. It was the safest place we knew. That night, I drove in silence. Again, no GPS. I knew the roads by heart. I brought nothing but my keys, phone, and the burning need to hear whatever Randy had found. But when I pulled up, everything changed. The place was lit up. Flashing lights, police vehicles, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze like some cruel party decoration. My headlights swept across the gravel path, stopping at the sight of a deputy waving me down. My stomach dropped before he even spoke. Sir, he said, hand raised. This is an active crime scene. You'll need to turn around. IK** led the engine. Rolled down my window. This is my family's property, I said, voice low. My brother called me. I'm supposed to meet him. The officer frowned, looked toward the cabin. He didn't answer. And then the words came. Simple. Devastating. There's been an incident. Where's Randy? He hesitated. Inside. I got out of the car, pushed forward before anyone could stop me. Another officer stepped in. You can't. I didn't care. Not until I saw the stretcher. It was wheeled out the side door, covered. The shape beneath the sheet was unmistakable. My legs gave out. I hit the ground before I realized I'd fallen. Mr. Reeves, someone said. We need to ask you a few questions. But I couldn't hear them. All I could see was that white sheet. And Randy, my brother, my friend, the only person I trusted left in the world, underneath it. The next few hours moved in fragments, like a movie spliced out of order. A deputy reading me my Miranda rights, not arresting me, but informing me. Standard procedure, they said. Inside the cabin, a rifle. Old. Familiar. My grandfather's. Registered to me. Beside it, an ammunition box. With my fingerprints. And Avery. Inside. She stood in the corner of the living room, arms crossed, face pale. Our parents sat on the couch. My mother was crying. My father looked like a ghost. They claimed they just happened to stop by. A coincidence. Avery said she had arrived to talk to Randy about family matters. That he had sounded unstable on the phone. None of it made sense. It got worse. Investigators had found emails, threats sent to Randy's inbox. From my account. Detailed. Hostile. Accusatory. The timestamps were damning. But I knew something they didn't. I wasn't anywhere near the cabin at the time of death. I was in my office building. Late. Alone, yes, but surrounded by security cameras. Keycard logs. Entry alerts. They tried to rattle me in the interrogation room. Asked why my G*N was at the cabin. Why the emails came from my address. Why I'd driven there without telling anyone. I didn't lie. I told them the truth. That I was following a trail of deception. That I believed my wife was cheating on me. That my brother had found something about it and asked me to meet him. That I had nothing to hide. It was a long night. But eventually, the surveillance from my workplace cleared me. The timeline didn't fit. I hadn't fired the P*N. I hadn't sent the emails. Someone else had. They let me go. But I walked out different. Because someone had gone to a terrifying length to destroy me. Frame me. And they had led my brother to do it. Back at home, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Could barely breathe. Avery wasn't there. She'd left, supposedly to stay with her parents. I didn't care where she went. I didn't want her near me. That's when I remembered the flash drive. Randy had given it to me months earlier, tucked inside a birthday card with a dumb comic reference. Keep it safe, he said. Just in case. At the time, I thought it was a joke. Maybe a backup of our old gaming saves. It wasn't. I dug through my desk until I found it. Plugged it in. And what I saw changed everything. It was full of files. Encrypted but not impossible to crack. Randy had labeled the folders with his usual code words: wasp nest, slickwire, bluff cake. I opened the first one. Emails between Avery and someone named Kevin Lorenz. Not just romantic. Business. Details about Avery's clinic. Insurance records. Patient data. Export logs. They were selling sensitive medical information. Forging consent forms. Billing insurance companies for services never rendered. Kevin's name was all over the spreadsheets. Randy had everything. Dates. Transactions. Bank accounts. And then audio recordings. Clipped but clear. One was Avery and Kevin discussing liquidation plans. Another was Kevin referencing Randy by name. He's getting too close. If we don't neutralize him, he'll sink the whole thing. The file was dated 2 weeks ago. My heart stopped. Randy knew. He'd been investigating them. And someone had found out. That's why he called me. That's why he died. Not in a random act of violence. Not by accident. He was murdered. To cover their tracks. I closed the laptop. Sat there in the dark. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about something deeper. More dangerous. And I had just become the last person standing between them and exposure. Grief doesn't ask for permission. It shows up unannounced, pulls up a chair at your table, and eats every bit of peace you have left. But as I sat in the kitchen, staring at Randy's flash drive and the weight of everything it exposed, I realized I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. They led him. They tried to frame me. And if I didn't act now, they would bury the truth along with him. So I began to build. Not revenge. Not yet. Just a record. A system. A way to take the chaos and sharpen it into something that could cut through their lies. First, I backed up every file on Randy's drive to multiple sources, one local, one encrypted in the cloud, and one on a second flash drive I locked in my car's glove box. Then I started making calls. Old contacts. People from my college days. Friends who'd gone into tech, cybersecurity, digital forensics. I didn't give them names. Just said I needed help analyzing a complex chain of financial fraud. Enough mystery to pique their interest. Enough trust to keep them loyal. In 3 days, I had a working system. And what it revealed was worse than I imagined. Avery wasn't just moonlighting in betrayal. She was an architect of it. Through her clinic, she had access to thousands of patient records. Every signature, every insurance detail, every piece of sensitive information entrusted to her. She and Kevin had created shell companies, 8 of them, registered in Delaware, Nevada, even overseas. These shells were used to submit inflated or entirely fake insurance claims. Patients were charged for procedures they never received. Consent forms were forged. Refunds were intercepted. And the money? It moved fast. Transferred through crypto wallets, run through dummy vendors, then dropped into a trust fund tied to Kevin's family office. The scale was staggering. Millions. And there was more. I found a trail leading to my parents. That one hit harder than I thought it would. Bank statements showed wire transfers made from a shell company, Galen Core Consulting LLC, into my parents' account. Quiet, monthly deposits. The amounts weren't massive, but enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to suggest compensation. I confronted my father. He didn't deny it. We were drowning in debt, he said, avoiding my eyes. Avery offered help. She said it was a family investment opportunity. You knew, I said quietly. You knew something was off. He didn't answer. My mother was crying before I walked out. I didn't go back. Instead, I went deeper. I pulled metadata from the clinic's servers. IP logs, email headers, calendar entries. I built a timeline, every transaction matched against Avery's known locations. It was like fitting bones together in a skeleton that refused to lie still. Then I brought in someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Micah Callan. Micah was ex-NSA. We'd worked together briefly on a civilian project. He owed me a favor, one I'd never intended to call in. When he saw the files, he whistled low. Jesus, Jasper, he said. This isn't petty fraud. This is industrial-grade espionage. I know. You realize what happens if this leaks wrong? I do. Good, he said, plugging in a drive. Because you're about to set off a bomb. It took us 5 days to package everything into a coherent dossier. We wrote it like a report. Executive summary. Timelines. Financial analysis. Witness statements. Screensh** TS. Emails. Audio logs. Medical ethics violations. Insurance fraud. Legal impersonation. False identities. Money laundering. Conspiracy. And then I started distribution. I sent it to 3 major journalists, 2 investigative, 1 healthcare-focused. I uploaded redacted versions to a whistleblower site. I emailed the Department of Health and Human Services, the FBI tip line, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the Texas Medical Board, and I CC'd Kevin. I wanted him to see the avalanche coming. The first crack hit within 48 hours. The clinic received an unannounced audit. Inspectors showed up mid-morning, demanding access to billing records, patient files, employment contracts. Avery wasn't there. She was in Dallas for a conference. But her staff called her in a panic. 2 hours later, she issued a public statement, fully cooperating. Allegations unfounded. 3 hours after that, the clinic's main investor pulled funding. By the end of the week, the clinic's license was suspended pending investigation. Kevin tried to distance himself. Issued his own statement. Blamed unauthorized actors. But the emails, signed, time-stamped, dripping with incrimination, didn't lie. I watched from afar as their world cracked open. First, I backed up every file on Randy's drive to multiple sources, 1 local, 1 encrypted in the cloud, and 1 on a second flash drive I locked in my car's glove box. Then I started making calls. Old contacts. People from my college days. Friends who'd gone into tech, cybersecurity, digital forensics. I didn't give them names. Just said I needed help analyzing a complex chain of financial fraud. Enough mystery to pique their interest. Enough trust to keep them loyal. In 3 days, I had a working system. And what it revealed was worse than I imagined. Avery wasn't just moonlighting in betrayal. She was an architect of it. Through her clinic, she had access to thousands of patient records. Every signature, every insurance detail, every piece of sensitive information entrusted to her. She and Kevin had created shell companies, 8 of them, registered in Delaware, Nevada, even overseas. These shells were used to submit inflated or entirely fake insurance claims. Patients were charged for procedures they never received. Consent forms were forged. Refunds were intercepted. And the money? It moved fast. Transferred through crypto wallets, run through dummy vendors, then dropped into a trust fund tied to Kevin's family office. The scale was staggering. Millions. And there was more. I found a trail leading to my parents. That one hit harder than I thought it would. Bank statements showed wire transfers made from a shell company, Galen Core Consulting LLC, into my parents' account. Quiet, monthly deposits. The amounts weren't massive, but enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to suggest compensation. I confronted my father. He didn't deny it. We were drowning in debt, he said, avoiding my eyes. Avery offered help. She said it was a family investment opportunity. You knew, I said quietly. You knew something was off. He didn't answer. My mother was crying before I walked out. I didn't go back. Instead, I went deeper. I pulled metadata from the clinic's servers. IP logs, email headers, calendar entries. I built a timeline, every transaction matched against Avery's known locations. It was like fitting bones together in a skeleton that refused to lie still. Then I brought in someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Micah Callan. Micah was ex-NSA. We'd worked together briefly on a civilian project. He owed me a favor. One I'd never intended to call in. When he saw the files, he whistled low. Jesus, Jasper, he said. This isn't petty fraud. This is industrial-grade espionage. I know. You realize what happens if this leaks wrong? I do. Good, he said, plugging in a drive. Because you're about to set off a bomb. It took us 5 days to package everything into a coherent dossier. We wrote it like a report. Executive summary. Timelines. Financial analysis. Witness statements. Screensh *TS. Emails. Audio logs. Medical ethics violations. Insurance fraud. Legal impersonation. False identities. Money laundering. Conspiracy. And then I started distribution. I sent it to 3 major journalists, 2 investigative, 1 healthcare-focused. I uploaded redacted versions to a whistleblower site. I emailed the Department of Health and Human Services, the FBI tip line, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the Texas Medical Board, NICC Kevin. I wanted him to see the avalanche coming. The first crack hit within 48 hours. The clinic received an unannounced audit. Inspectors showed up mid-morning, demanding access to billing records, patient files, employment contracts. Avery wasn't there. She was in Dallas for a conference. But her staff called her in a panic. 2 hours later, she issued a public statement, fully cooperating. Allegations unfounded. 3 hours after that, the clinic's main investor pulled funding. By the end of the week, the clinic's license was suspended pending investigation. Kevin tried to distance himself. Issued his own statement. Blamed unauthorized actors. But the emails signed, time-stamped, dripping with incrimination, didn't lie. I watched from afar as their world cracked open. My inbox flooded. Reporters asking for interviews. Agents asking for clarification. I kept it clean. Professional. I signed everything with a legal representative. Never spoke on camera. Never claimed credit. Let the facts speak. Not when the damage couldn't be undone. But justice, real, tangible justice, had never felt so bittersweet. I was still getting calls. From Avery. From her lawyer. From mutual friends asking what happened. And can we meet? And are you okay? I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. But I wasn't finished either. Because there was still one move left. The final act. The confrontation. Not for closure. Not even for vengeance. Just for truth. All of it. On the record. One last time. So I made the calls. I rented the cabin under a false name. Didn't want any of them to know it was me until it was too late. One by one, I invited them, Avery, Kevin, my parents. Each for a different reason. A settlement discussion. A reconciliation. A confidential investor meeting. The bait was tailored. The trap was real. They arrived separately just like I'd planned. Avery showed first. Kevin arrived an hour later. My parents last quiet, uncomfortable. No one knew the others were coming. That was important. Inside, the table was set with folders. Each one labeled Avery, Kevin, Thomas, and Linda Reeves. I waited until they were seated. Then I pressed play. The TV screen lit up with a video of Kevin's face. It was a deepfake I'd commissioned. Believable, emotional, damning. In the video, Kevin admitted to manipulating Avery. Claimed he orchestrated Randy's death. Detailed the fraud. Paused for dramatic remorse. Panic set in instantly. Kevin stood up. "This is fake," he shouted. "This is a setup." Avery was already dialing her attorney. My parents were frozen. I stayed calm. "You think that's bad?" I asked, pointing to the folders. "Try opening those." They did. Inside were printouts, emails, bank transfers, **TS, witness affidavits. Every page a nail in their collective coffin. Kevin bolted for the door. That's when the officers stepped in. I tipped them off ahead of time, sent everything through proper channels. They were just waiting for my call. Now, watching each of them get cuffed, panicked, pleading, trying to flip on each other, I should have felt triumph. I didn't. Just a strange, exhausted emptiness. The trials came fast. Kevin got 30 years. Wire fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage. Avery received 22. Her medical license gone. Every title, every shred of her career, stripped. My parents weren't jailed, but they lost everything. Home, pensions, their reputation, probation, public disgrace. People kept asking me if I felt better, if it was enough. It wasn't, because Randy was still gone. But then, as I was going through his things, clearing out his apartment, I found something. A folder marked Reeves Initiative. Inside were notes, plans, diagrams. He'd been designing a support network for veterans with PTSD, a reintegration program, small, grassroots, just an idea on paper. But it was real. It was his. And it was mine now. I used the money from the settlement to launch it. Filed for nonprofit status. Partnered with clinics, therapists, housing agencies. The foundation grew slowly. But honestly, we called it the Reeves Way. People started writing in, volunteering, sharing stories, healing. Not because of what I lost, but because of who I'd lost. Randy never lied. Never played a game. Never turned away from someone in need. And in honoring him, I finally found something stronger than revenge. Direction. It didn't fix everything. It didn't undo the pain. But it gave the pain somewhere to go. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was moving forward.